indeed in various farms, teepees. Yeah, it was all that world, the late 60s, when the world changed. And I think the world changed because the world was slightly more relaxed, having got over the Second World War. Yes? That people started to change society. And Pauline and family came to the hills, yes? And with Trevor, of course. I'm not quite sure. Rachel, were you there at that point when you arrived?
She was 5.
She was 5. Here we are. So we're talking early 70s, and she, of course, came to her beloved Llanailu and the farm up there, where she lived for 50-odd years, yes, and still very, very dear to her heart, yes. In the early 70s, I was just going off to college, and I went up to see her and introduced myself. Because I really liked the idea of, because we'd heard that there was this potter living up in the hill. So I went up to see her. I suppose I was about 18, 19, and there were these big barns, and there she was throwing pots, teaching herself how to throw a pot, yes? And that's when I first met her, thinking, made the first mistake, yes, and when I first met her, we'll go and have, I think I came up with my sister-in-law, we'll go and have a look, there might be some seconds. At which point she said, seconds? I don't do seconds. So that was one of my first meetings, yes. I was hooked. I was hooked by her, and she asked me what I was doing, and I said I was just off to theatre school. All I could see was that she raised her eyes. She didn't tell me that she came from a theatre background, but she said, "Oh, I'm interested in theatre," she said. And that was the beginning of our friendship. And I then started collecting the pots, the original ones, the brown ones, which I'm telling you now, she doesn't have any of them. Yes. And I have a very large, nearly 200 pieces of the original pottery. I became absolutely, and my frequent visits then, when I came back to, I would go up and see her. And then, yes, when I moved back to Brecon, I actually came back to Wales to run the Sherman Theatre in Cardiff as artistic director, and I would meet up with her there, at which point she had Tally was with her, Rachel was living in Cardiff, and they used to come lots of Saturday mornings to bring Tally to the theatre, who would run riot, and then he would go in and watch the Saturday morning theatre, and Pauline and Rachel, of course, instigated that, bringing culture into their young people's lives. So I re-engaged with Pauline at those times. And then I moved back to Brecon, yes, and our friendship grew from there. I'm talking about someone who has the ability to drop bombshells in your life, yes? And that's what Pauline does to you, yes? So, for instance, first one, she says, I went to theatre school. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, she didn't go to an ordinary school. She went to a stage school, it was known as in those days, a stage school. And suddenly she says, oh yes, I was there with Barbara Windsor. Yes, she drops these famous people, yes, who she trained with as a child. It's absolutely fascinating. Then she'd say things like, oh yes, the Palladium, oh yes, I was in the Palladium pantomime for many years. She, as a child, she was in the London Palladium pantomime. Yes. I don't know how many years, Pauline?
2 years.
2 years, yes. So there's a bombshell, you know, the biggest theatre in London, and and Pauline is playing it. Then, I don't know whether any of you are aware of Stratford East Theatre. Stratford East Theatre in Stratford in London, was run by Joan Littlewood. Joan Littlewood was probably the best, or the revolutionary theatre director. And Joan was amazing. She was an amazing director. Things like Oh, What a Lovely War, yes. She created that with her actors, yes. She created the play, first play by a young woman in the West End, A Taste of Honey. Oh, says Pauline, I was in that. I understudied the main lead. Bombshell. She works with this amazing director, yes, who is legendary in world theatre, not just British theatre, I'm talking world theatre. And that's what Pauline is doing. She's a member of that company. Yeah. A couple of years ago, we went to see a play at the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company. We went for the day, and we saw a play at the RSC all about Joan Littlewood. Great play, really good. And throughout the play, Pauline would say, well, it wasn't like that. They've got that bit wrong, yes. And it was fascinating. I mean, this is an incredible background, yes. After that, she goes into weekly rep and plays in theatres all over Britain, yeah, as an actress and as an ASM, an assistant stage manager, but performing. From there, she goes on to television, and she's working all over Britain in TV and in New York, yes? At which point, her and Trevor decide, we've had enough, we're going to move to the hills. So, all that background are the bombshells that she drops in, because she doesn't talk about it. And my worry is that we're going to lose those stories, because they're incredible stories. So, what arrives is the potter. Well, it doesn't really. She's not a potter at this point, yes. What she does, yes, her distinctive, yeah, she starts her own business and becoming a potter. She's self-taught, yes. She gets involved and creates haymakers, yes, a collective of artists. She's part of South Wales Potters and creates an organisation for the whole of South Wales of potters working and exhibiting together. She is the first person to work with people and invent the International Ceramics Festival in Aberystwyth. Yeah? She's never done this before. She doesn't know how to do it, but she makes it work. And that's what is amazing. She didn't know how to pot, but she made it work. Yeah? It's that determination, yes, which I'm sure all of you have experienced with Pauline, that dogged, yes, determination. If it's going to happen, she will make it happen. She is determined, and that's what, yeah, she'll change the world, and she does. And throughout those times, she changed the world. Suddenly, in her 70s, she does a degree, yes, and goes to university. Yes? And suddenly she's got a degree. Yes? She, this year, decides, I want to see the blossom in Japan in the spring. So she gets on a flight and she goes there and she sees the blossom. Absolutely determined. Then she moves into Brecon, of course, from some island, and lives in Brecon, and immediately, it was very difficult, because Pauline's move into town came with lockdown, and it was very isolating, particularly isolating for Pauline, and now, because we talked every day through lockdown. But as a part of that, yes, she has made new friends here today, U3A, and various organisations in the town, and she still continues to make new friends, particularly through the U3A. She's got her garden going, and she's thoroughly enjoying her little garden so she's fiercely independent. Yes, as Rachel will tell you, you want to try living with it. Yes. Yes. The celebration of her grandchildren, Danny. Yes. very much part of her life, and you'll see some of Tally's work later on this afternoon. Tally couldn't make it today, but don't worry, he's here in spirit. Yeah? I just want to say to you, the bombshells still carry on. This week, we'd gone out to Hay because she was having some work on their dentist, at which point she said, don't tell Rachel, because Rachel would shout at me, because Rachel would have said, I'll take you. Yeah, so I was going to Hay, said, I'll take you. We're coming back from Hay, and we happen to be talking about South Pacific. So, great musical. I said, lovely, I love that musical. Yes, I was in that. I was the little Polynesian girl. Yes, at Drury Lane. Yeah, another bombshell. Where are these? How many more are in there? Yes, yes. What we do know, and all of you experience this, that when you are friends with Pauline, you are friends for life. And her loyalty and her love of people, as well as being an incredible artist, her love of people, her love of community, her political voice in the world, whether it's working with the refugees and people who are displaced, or whether she's working with the people in her street. Her loyalty to friendship is, I believe, incredible. There is a quote, "Let there be no purpose in friendship save the deepening of the spirit." And that's what she does, yeah? It's a deep, deep, deep friendship of spiritual sharing. And that's what Pauline means to me, which is why I'd like you to raise your glasses and just say to Pauline and her friendship, and to celebrate her spirit. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you. Thank you. Here we are. Needless to say, before I started, don't forget I want to say something afterwards, says Pauline. So if you sit down, there are still more words. And as Pauline said to me, I don't know what I'm going to say, but she's determined to say something.
I just want to Rachel and this surprise. No, I'm going to speak for 2 minutes. 1 minute. Just thank you all for coming, and this is a real surprise to me. I hardly recognise the person that Phil is talking about.
We do. We recognise them.
What was that?
We recognise them.
Yeah, and Lynn is, I've known Lynn for a long, long time. So thank you all for coming, and just enjoy yourselves. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.